Coach's Corner, our segment hosted by the coach himself. Coach Triplett, take it away.
All right. So, as we start kind of thinking about, we talked a little bit last week about coaches and kind of in the top 10 all-time wins. We talked about active coaches and then all-time. And I kind of just got to thinking about, I'm a little bit older, and I wanted to point out, and I'm going to tie this all together. But the first thing is, and you may already know this, but if you don't, the most lopsided victory in the history of a men's championship in the NCAA tournament, not speaking about the NIT, is 30 points. And it was, I think, 103-73 lopsided victory. And it was way back when, and it may be from a team you do not expect, from a coach you do not expect. Tyler, do you know what I'm talking about? You know who it is?
I can't draw it. I can't get it off the top of my head. You said 30 points.
30 points.
You know what era? Or can you give me a hint?
It was late 80s, early 90s, end of the 80s, beginning of the 90s.
Good chance it involved Duke.
It did involve Duke. So here's the deal. Duke was on the losing side of the most lopsided victory in men's college basketball championship history. A 30-point loss to UNLV, had Larry Johnson, coached by Coach Tarkanian. Now, I bring this up only because oftentimes, as fans, you get so wrapped up in just one season or one game. Well, the next 2 years in a row, Duke won the national championship. And then they have now, under Coach K, before he retired, a total of 5 championships. So my point in all this, and I'm going to tie it into some NBA stuff here, is that sometimes, as painful as it is, a team, a player, a coach has to take their licks, maybe struggle through some downtimes before they can really establish themselves. You talked about UConn maybe now becoming considered a dynasty. Obviously, San Antonio Spurs, they could never get past the Houston Rockets until they finally did. If you look at in the NBA and the Eastern Conference, in the early to mid 80s, it was the Boston Celtics in the East, usually the Lakers in the West, and Detroit just could not get past them. Boom, Detroit finally figures that out. They win their championships, and lo and behold, below them are next in line trying to get past, can't get past, are the Chicago Bulls with Michael Jordan, and eventually they do. So the reason I bring this up, just as a coach, I've been on the losing side of some things, and of course we've won some games, but sometimes people, whether it's fans, whether it's administration, players are so quick to make a snapshot judgment on the ability of a coach or a team or a player based off of a very small sample size. And what we saw with Duke, which is obviously an extreme example though, is, man, trust the process. You brought this coach in to do a job. You hired him, so give him the tools, the support, let him work through it. Now, look, no one was probably going to fire somebody who made it to the championship, but I could see where, back then people thinking that he got out coached, and now the idea would be laughable to think that Coach K ever got out coached. So anyway, that's just my coach's corner there. I wanted to talk a little bit about some past trivia, and then the idea of as fans and administration, let's get out of this knee-jerk mentality when something goes wrong that we have to replace everything, or we have to replace the coach, or this player can't play. Let the thing play out. We've seen time and time and again, sometimes it takes time, but when it works, the reward is sky high.
Well, let's give a little bit of love to Jerry Tarkanian right there. I mean, you got me on that one. I hadn't remembered it was that UNLV running Rebs team, but I remember Jerry. Well, I don't remember him, back in the 80s. He wasn't around yet, but I mean, heck, Jerry Tarkanian, an absolute legend there at UNLV. He's recently retired. Man, he hadn't been retired 10 years, I don't believe, but he's one of the all-time winningest coaches of all time. Over 700 wins by my count, an absolute legend. So it's not like Coach K was out there losing to a schmuck or anything. He was losing to a legend in Jerry Tarkanian. Those UNLV teams in the late 80s, early 90s were pretty darn good.
Oh, they definitely were. I believe Stacey Augmon was also there.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, they were formidable.
Mhm.
But now when we talk about dynasties, we're talking about Duke, not UNLV.
Yeah. Yeah.
I just found it ironic that probably the best coach in the history of men's college basketball is on the losing side of the most lopsided game in championship history. So it just goes to show, man, everybody at this Division I level can coach. Everybody can play. Sometimes you just get people that you get a collection of players that can play, or you get the right coaching staff, but it doesn't mean these other guys can't do the job.
Well, you're absolutely right. You nail it perfectly, Tripp. A lot of the time these teams have to get over the hump of someone. I love the comparison back to the 80s and 90s with the NBA. You had the Celtics and the Lakers who pretty much ran most of the 80s, and then the bad boys Pistons had to do something. So they went in there and got more physical, got tougher, and then it got them a couple championships, and then right behind them was Jordan. Jordan had to bulk up. If you remember, he had his fits with the Pistons, couldn't get past them. So, he had to go and put on a lot of weight, a lot of muscle. Had to add some firepower there to the Bulls. But you're right. I mean, I've been in some battles with you out there, playing basketball. There's a lot of times there's a team you need to get beat by. There is such thing as good losses. You'll say that as a coach. There are good losses. There's losses that wake you up, and you nailed it perfectly there with the Coach K comparison.